Saturday, August 9th began in Greensboro, North Carolina, outside Norfolk Southern's Pomona Yard. The action was immediate, as outbound train E50 assembled their consist while Amtrak's Crescent cruised by on the main line. E50 is a reliable one out of Greensboro, departing daily with the sunrise for Selma. It was this morning's overarching goal as my buddy Sam and I descended into town in hopes of an eastward chase. Following Amtrak Train 20, we relocated downtown to Control Point Elm, where North Carolina Department of Transportation Train 71 was throttling off for High Point soon after. Greensboro is a pretty busy spot, situated along the North Carolina Railroad's main line between Charlotte and Morehead City. A good mix of passenger and freight trains keep the rails polished, with about 24 movements heading west for Charlotte, east for Raleigh, or north for Virginia. The freighters are spread across all hours of the day, whereas most of the passenger action takes place during daylight. This is evident as Amtrak's Carolinian came knocking on the door, having just departed Charlotte, bound for New York. With the foreseeable passenger traffic cleared, it was now E50's turn at Elm, where we see why this train was so desirable. Painted to honor the Reading Railroad, SD70 ACE number 1067 is a podium locomotive as far as Class 1s are concerned. On my hit list since its debut, the Reading engine lived up to the hype as its green and yellow nose glimmered in the morning sun. After a few hours of shuffling around Pomona, E50 had accumulated quite the train and was quick to get out of town as I scurried onto Elm Street for my first run-by. .1067 brought a lot of rail fans out alongside Sam and I this morning, but we hit the road almost instantly for a chase into McLeansville. I sailed into town with seconds to spare. Starting with this poorly timed shot, things began to unravel in McLeansville. E50's impressive length meant he was to yield for opposing traffic, putting him in the hole at the nearby Superior siding for counterpart E51. Sam and I continued east into Gibsonville for the westbound, as the train soon made an appearance through the picturesque downtown. from the start, E50's length meant he was to go from siding to siding throughout the day to allow passage for 6 more passenger trains. 6 hours and 1 crew later, the manifest finally limped through Raleigh around 4:30 p.m., and I had a 30-minute window to make something happen. By the time I reached Clayton, east of the city, I somehow missed the train that took 11 hours to arrive. Although I was quite happy to have seen 1067 this morning, I did go home with my tail between my legs after the morning's underwhelming chase and another failed attempt later in the day. Looking to redeem ourselves the following day, Sunday morning found Sam and I at Cary as we were confident the Ace would return west on E51. As most Cary mornings are, this was a busy one, with Amtrak's Carolinian at 10 a.m., the DOT's Piedmont 6 minutes later, and E50 10 minutes prior to 11 o'clock. E51 was part of the fun, squeezing through the action just after 10:30 a.m. E51 is an early morning train, but I suppose Saturday's horribly late E50 pushed his schedule back a few hours. I'm a pretty optimistic rail fan, but with an engine like 1067, I wanted to make the most of it, and the past 24 hours were not what I was willing to walk away with. Turning setbacks into comebacks, I was out for the 3rd day in a row looking for the Reading, which led me into Selma. Due to its popularity, online reporting of the locomotive was plentiful throughout the morning, notifying me that the Ace was yet again up front on train E50. Terminating in Selma, most of E50's consist gets right back on the rails as P98 for New Bern. This often includes E50's power set, a notion that I'd bet my afternoon on. The house doesn't always win, and I was quite pleased to see the green and yellow locomotive right where it should be as yard crew P01 built the outbound consist. As P01 went about their business, I moved a mile east into the adjacent town of Pine Level. Between some heavy rain and flash flood warnings, green signals, and a subsequent PTC malfunction, it was a roller coaster of emotions, but good news prevailed as a new crew eventually got 1067 and train P98 underway for New Bern. While E50 routinely operates with a DPU, that locomotive had been brought to the head end along with 3 other GEs, making for a neat 6-engine lineup. The daily Selma to New Bern turn is a reliable afternoon movement, what I've always known as train P98. It's symboled P96 on Mondays, however, and would provide a wonderful chase of the Reading Heritage Unit as 1067 departed for New Bern. The train now had track authority all the way to New Bern, as the two of us were set to sail east through the scenic North Carolina farmlands. If 1067 wasn't enough, I knew that P96's route offers ample opportunity to pace the train along some parallel roadways. Armed with an appetite for sensory overload, I caught up to P96 outside Pine Level along East Pine Street and alternate Route 70. This was an excellent chance to put the new action camera through its paces, where I achieved over 3 miles of side-by-side running with the Reading Heritage engine. To say I was thrilled would be a gross understatement. This was hands down an all-time rail fanning moment for me. Right up there with FEC's Pink Ladies and RBMN 425, I could not stop smiling as I gawked at the 1067. The Reading Heritage engine and its train P96 are also a window into Norfolk Southern's creative and impressive Eastern Carolina business unit. It's an internal organization within NS, complete with its own management, marketing, and operating teams that oversee the ECBU's 485 miles and customer base. This move was done on the curtails of the Thoroughbred Shortline program, in which NS spun off 16 branch lines to shortline operators under the guise of business growth through an independent mindset. Some of these railroads include the ACWR, Carolina Coastal, and Yadkin Valley, with 14 of the original 16 still in business. Apparently, the Class 1 wanted a piece of action for themselves, retaining the ECBU and operating it as if it were a short line. These practices are evident in the unit's tandem locals, with E50 feeding the ECBU and P98 bringing the train further into New Bern. From there, cargo is split up for Chocowinity and the Carolina Coastal, the booming port of Morehead City, plus industries along the way, and even military traffic for Marine Base Camp Lejeune and jet fuel for Cherry Point. Much like its related short lines, the ECBU has been in place since the early 2000s, all of which are a testament to the success of the Thoroughbred Short Line program. I liken the ECBU to CSX's Bone Valley in Florida and think both are great examples of shifting efforts to accommodate certain regions. It may not work everywhere, but NS is onto something here in the plains of North Carolina, which, by the way, looked magnificent as today's leader assimilated nicely into the countryside. Making for an exciting chase, 1067 kept its train moving at a relatively good clip somewhere near the 40-mile-an-hour mark. I knew the upcoming tight turns of Goldsboro would work in my favor, as NS and CSX intersect through town via some interesting track geometry. What used to be a Southern Railway yard is now a dilapidated mess of untouched track, with only the main line seeing any form of activity. For nearly 3 weeks prior, the E50 and 51 pair had been powered by 1067, 3630, and 4869. Not part of the combination were the 3 other GEs, which had been added by P01 in Selma as the final touch this afternoon. This led me to believe there was a unit train expected off the coast in the coming days, as the ECBU is home to numerous grain elevators and tank farms that provide additional revenue for the railroad. As these engines were moving closer to Moorhead, there was likely an influx of traffic from the port, but I couldn't worry about it in Goldsboro, as the train was soon set to resume track speed. I wanted to get east of town with plenty of time on P96 and lit down at one of those elevators on the east side of LaGrange. Although not currently rail served, it is a nice trackside touch to the agricultural region. With 6 locomotives and 22 cars, it sounded to me like engine 1067 was doing all the work this evening. I happily accepted these conditions, as the sound of a lone EMD maintaining track speed is always one to remember. From LaGrange, I got a little distracted and decided to try my luck pacing along the nearby Fields Station Road. That was over pretty quickly, as I realized this was not the stretch of pavement I thought, and was just as soon back on US 70 fighting traffic to overtake the train. Bypassing Kinston, I was back in front outside the community of Dover, as the engineer opens it up a few notches for the light ascent into town. Tracks to New Bern remain relatively flat over the long run, but there are multiple rolling hills in the interim. The train has crested one of the last, as we're now about 20 miles outside of New Bern. The rails remain rifle-shot straight all the way into town, paralleled for the next 15 miles by Old Highway 70. This road would provide my last hurrah of the 1067, where I managed to squeeze some pacing in between my final 2 run-bys. The Reading Railroad is one of Norfolk Southern's more iconic predecessors, with nearly 1,500 miles of track sprawling across New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. Many of those route miles came via branch lines, with the railroad's longest mainline haul being only 200 miles. This posed an issue for the Reading, as trucking took the American economy by storm and dominated the 500-mile freight market. Needing to adapt fast and under new leadership, the Reading created their B-Line service brand in 1966. This concept broke free from conventional railroading, allowing high-volume shippers a fast and non-stop train from one facility to the next and bypassing time-consuming freight yards. Transit times were improved exponentially, and by 1967, there were roughly 12 B-Line trains a month across the Reading system. The brand was so successful that the railroad painted new locomotives with B-Line lettering, the same scheme NS chose to honor its predecessor. The B-Line logo is genius. 2 honeybees with coal diamonds for bodies, an elegant nod to the railroad's past while advertising their future. Even after Conrail consumed the Reading, B-Line trains were still operated and lay the groundwork for modern-day ideals. The Reading Railroad was popular among rail fans for its numerous appealing liveries, and I think it's extremely fitting to see the B-Line locomotive in charge of Norfolk Southern's ECBU 49 years after the Reading was put out to pasture. Passing through the town of Cove City, P96 closely resembled a B-Line train with its dedicated consist, quick speed, and marvelous leader. Although Reading predated the SD70 ACE by 28 years, I think it was the obvious choice of locomotive for the B-Line Heritage Unit. It's my opinion that certain schemes are worn better on certain locomotives, and I appreciate Norfolk Southern's attention to detail in deciding which railroads should be honored on their EMD versus GE locomotives. With just a mile and a half of parallel road and rail left, I decided to go for one more run-by from the truck bed as the light rain continued over the picturesque landscape. I'm not sure how the crew knew this was my final shot, but I appreciated the farewell salute nonetheless. Wrapping up my chase of P96 with one last race, I couldn't do anything other than smile. This locomotive is a beauty, certainly a leader amongst the ranks of heritage units nationwide. After 2 subpar attempts, I was ecstatic at how this afternoon unfolded, and doubt I'll forget the feeling anytime soon. It's these types of outings that make the hobby so enjoyable when it's just you and a good train through some small towns with great scenery. Thanks for railfanning with me today. I hope you enjoyed my hunt for Reading heritage as much as I did.